The Whitecaps getting busy in the transfer window already, with reports that Vancouver will sell Pedro Vite to Pumas in Liga MX and sign Kenji Cabrera from Melgar in Peru's top division. How big are the next few months here for the Whitecaps? They're slipping in the MLS table. It was not a good June. It's not been a good start to July. They barely got past Valor in the Canadian Championship, but they do remain within contention in the Western Conference and for the Supporters' Shield here, Britta.
Yeah, the third place as we record this before they go to Houston. I do think that, for the Whitecaps, we would be a very frustrating couple of months, particularly for Alex, if they are a team that we're talking about as a wild card team again come the end of the season, trying to sneak into the playoffs. This is a team that looks as though they should have home field advantage for the MLS Cup playoffs locked up and sealed. But man, the wheels seem to be falling off, and losing Pedro Vite would be huge. Like when they reports of his extension, which was after Mexico City, but the start of Gold Cup, start of Club World Cup, I think middle of June. I think we all expected that was it, at least for the end of the year, at least until the winter, before you would hear any rumors. So for Pumas to come in, I'm sure they see that price, and who knows? We suspect that Vancouver wouldn't have broken the bank to keep him as a designated player. So for Pumas, who very easily can spend money, look at how many designated players the Vancouver Whitecaps came up against in their Mexican opposition throughout the CONCACAF Champions Cup. These teams are happy to spend money for quality players, and Pedro Vite has proven with what has been a MLS MVP-like season for him that he is a high-quality player. But Alex, I think it'd be a really, really big loss for Sorensen and the Caps.
Yeah, it would be a big loss. Of course, he's been excellent this year. He's taking the step forward that you want to see from him, that people have been itching to see, that he's shown in glimpses, just the quality brings on both sides of the ball, but especially in the final third, the long balls, the switches, the goals. It's all class. At the same time, like for example, when asked what's wrong with the Whitecaps, I haven't hit the panic button yet. I think it's far too early because this team hasn't been playing without their DPs for a few weeks because of injury. This has been a team that even entering this year, they had room to maneuver. They still had the U22 spots. They could potentially bring in a DP if they maneuver their roster mechanisms. That first start of the year, the first half of the year almost felt like a bonus because they were set up to build on it and go all in. And of course, what's tough about losing Pedro Vite is that takes you another step backwards. At the same time, what's lost in maybe all this, we have to see the fee from Pumas, of course, before saying anything. But if the Whitecaps have locked him up to an extension, which they appear to have, shout out to Manuel Veth, who's been doing a great job reporting, this story as he does for Transfermarkt. I'd imagine if they signed a long-term deal, they're getting a significant outlay. Liga MX has been throwing around money for fun. They paid a lot. Pumas paid a lot for Carrasquilla. I know Bogusz was quoted around just under 10 million when Cruz Azul got him off LAFC. Ditto when they got Georgios Giacomakis, who was a hefty fee. If the Whitecaps are getting upwards of 7 million from this, you take it, even if it's a tough blow. That's changing money, but now it puts pressure on investing. And this was a team that already knew they had to invest this summer window with the flexibility, and it just adds to that checklist. So I think that's why the next few months are so key, is that if you're going to make a move like this happens. Sometimes the reality of MLS, LAFC dealt with it last year with the Bogusz, but how the top teams respond, Cucho Hernandez is another example with Columbus, is you go out and make something happen. And Columbus went and got a Gazdag. LAFC went and pulling these players off the factory line. It seems like the top quality young South Americans. Well, for the Whitecaps, you have to respond in that way. And I think it's going to be a very big moment for Axel Schuster to do that with the hopefully extra 7 or 8, 9 mil, however it ends up being for Vite.
For Pedro Vite, though, it seems like almost a bit of a lateral move, because this isn't necessarily a step up. Through the last several years, MLS has been on par or very close to on par with Liga MX. And when you consider that Pedro Vite was linked with a club like Roma earlier this year, this doesn't seem quite like the move that Vite could hit at this point in his career, Brennan.
It's not that move, and to be honest, I don't think he could hit that move either. I thought Roma was too high of a jump and too big of a jump for him. Maybe that's a player we're talking about, with links to other Serie A teams. Pedro Vite to Sassuolo may not have raised the surprise, right? But when Roma, I thought, okay, great for him, but that's not someone you're expecting to walk into the team and play a starting role. Whereas I think at Pumas, he could play a starting role, and he's probably going to make 3 or 4 times the money. So, I think that for as much as you're not wrong to say that MLS has closed the gap, Mexican soccer is still bigger. And with Latin American players, they'll always be tops, and there's more weight and gravitas to that. So I'm not surprised that there's a bit more appeal by going to Mexico and going to Pumas than sticking around in Vancouver with all the uncertainty that still surrounds that club. Let's not forget they're up for sale. Well, who knows what the future holds for Vancouver?
Well, there's obviously financial advantages with Liga MX. I think it's important to note, and the fact that they've poached some very good players for a lot of money shows that it helps when you don't have, like you mentioned, Brett, you can sign 8 DPs, and I think that's where you're right. Where especially in the transfer market, some of these Liga MX teams have been able to flex their muscles over the last few years. Of we can go get this guy off you and pay a lot of money, and you guys are going to be powerless. But Ben does bring up a good point from Vite. Like at the same time, he's still only 23. He looks locked in to start for Ecuador. Ecuador has a great reputation on the transfer market just because of how good all these guys like Pacho and Moise Caicedo and the Hope Kendry Paez. Like it's a hot market where teams will be scouting Ecuador next year and be like, oh, Pedro Vite, Whitecaps, available at a good price. Could sign him. And I think him going to Pumas, especially if it's on bigger money, that just makes it a little harder. Like I think the Whitecaps are going to be open to selling him down the road. The fact that they're willing to sell him now shows like they're not going to get in the way of what he feels his ambitions. And I do say for his age, like there has been proof of the John Durans and the Thiago Almadas, some young South Americans going to good European environments if they prove themselves. And I think the next 12 months was a great chance for Vite to do that. So I am a bit surprised. Yeah, okay, Roma was a bit of a stretch, but like I saw Sporting were linked to him. Would that not have been a perfect gateway move for him to go for a couple mil? Whitecaps make a profit, and then maybe even down the road at 26, he makes a big jump. Absolutely. So Pumas does feel a bit puzzling because he can go be good now in Liga MX. He can go be great. But what's the ceiling for him there? And I just think now he was in more of a gateway position where if he goes to Pumas for that kind of money, they're going to want him to stick around, and that's going to change the trajectory of his career quite significantly.